It's really important to note here that the United States was not founded as a democracy. The Founding Fathers established the U.S. as a republic, as a representative republic, in which some, but not all, of the governed would have a say. The Constitution's "we the people," those famous opening words, referred to a small slice of the American population, basically propertied white men. It didn't include poor whites, it didn't include women, it didn't include African Americans. And the Constitution itself said nothing at all about voting rights for individuals. It left that issue up to the states. And so that is where we'll see the big changes begin to occur. So what happened next? What happened next that led in the early 19th century to a dramatic expansion of voting? Well, first, there was westward expansion. Now, you might ask yourself, what could westward expansion possibly have to do with voting? Well, the answer is a lot. Westward expansion led to the creation of new states, and the leaders of these new states all agreed on one thing. Economic development and prosperity, not to mention representation in Congress, were dependent on population growth. And one way to attract new settlers to these new states was to guarantee them a right they did not enjoy in the eastern states, voting rights. And this idea actually started in the East when Vermont became a state in 1791. They're the first state that, in their constitution that year, allowed universal white male suffrage. The next year, Kentucky adopted a similar provision, allowing basically all white men to vote. But then at that point, 1792, the movement, such as it was, all but ground to a halt. So there's a bit of a gap between the 1790s and the early 19th century. When the movement towards universal suffrage picks up again. And it picks up again in the mid-18-teens. And here's where we really see the turning point occurring. It started with Indiana. When Indiana became a state in 1816, it adopted universal white male suffrage. And then 4 states followed in quick succession. Illinois in 1818, Alabama in 1819, Maine in 1820, and Missouri in 1821. This trend towards universal suffrage in the West and in the South eventually caught the attention of political leaders in the older eastern states. Now that same year, 1821, believing that it was necessary to prevent the loss of population to these newer states in the West, Massachusetts and New York, 2 very big, prominent, important states, adopted universal white male suffrage. So the trend has now bounced back to the East, and many, many more states would follow. By 1828, the year that Andrew Jackson was elected president, most states had dropped their property restrictions or tax payment requirements on voting.